straight up, this thing is a friggin' rocket ship. Alright guys, today is the day we are finally breaking down my time trial bike. This is a 2018 Scott Plasma. Now, I personally think TT bikes are perhaps the most interesting bike breakdowns, and that's really because they get pretty custom. So a lot of people like to tweak a lot of the major components, and then you end up with something that is basically a skeleton or Frankenstein version of what was stock. That's exactly what you have here with my Scott Plasma. So let's go ahead and dive into all the details. Frame set first. This is a 2018 Scott Plasma frame set. When I picked it up, I actually got it secondhand. I am not the original owner. It had only been ridden a handful of times, and actually it was only raced one time, and that was in the Malibu Celebrity Triathlon. Now, out of respect for that person and their privacy, I'm not going to say who I picked it up from, but let's just say what was really cool about this is the proceeds from that sale actually went straight to charity, and I thought that was pretty awesome, and I didn't know it until after the fact, or I wouldn't have haggled on the price. This thing is full carbon, and it was actually my first full carbon bike that I ever owned. The front brake is just Shimano Ultegra. It's not super Aero or anything, but this bike does come with the Aero brake underneath on the rear. Now, that does limit stopping power just a little bit, but it hides the brake nicely and it doesn't put it up top over the top of the wheel. I do wish that the front brake was a little more Aero, but hey, what's a couple watts? Just kidding, a couple watts is a freaking lot over a 40K, so maybe I'll do something with those later. The other awesome thing that I actually liked about this frame set versus new bikes is basically the base bar setup and the headset and everything had not yet gone to that proprietary crap where you have to get like basically whatever Scott's proprietary stem setup is, and then their base bar and all that. It just gets really expensive and out of control, and it's completely uncustomizable. That actually leads me to the next item on the list, which is the cockpit. So I'm running this carbon profile design T0 base bar. That is actually what came stock on this setup. Notice the matching red and black. Ooh. It came with the brake levers and it was taped like this. Now the tape is fine when I am riding on the base bar, basically just the corner. It does allow a little bit of added grip there. You'll notice these extensions are actually just clip-on extensions. The elbow pads are integrated. They are adjusted all the way in so I can get nice and narrow. And I do have a set of ski bins on here. These are actually just alloy. And I recently swapped these from the T2 carbon extensions. These originally came on it, but as you can see, the shape of these don't really suit what I needed for my wrist angle here. I was breaking my wrists downward and holding onto the extensions like this, and that was causing me a lot of pain right here in the wrist. And so I was basically on my shift levers up here, and it was just extremely uncomfortable. So I opted for these ski bins right here, and they are alloy, but the weight savings, what does it really matter? I will say these T2 carbon extensions are extremely expensive. You wouldn't really think so considering they're kind of a whack design. Connected to these profile design extensions, I have this Aero Wahoo mount, I guess. It's the 22.2 or whatever it is, K-Edge combo mount. That is attached to the extension itself, and then the Wahoo seats nicely right here between the extensions. I honestly think this is perfect for staring at my power numbers while I'm ripping down the road doing almost 30 miles an hour at all times. That brings me to the end of the extensions. As you can see, I have them taped up with a little bit of medical tape here. That's just for a little bit of added grip behind my hands when I'm in TT position. One big thing I noticed is my hands were starting to slip a little bit when I would get sweaty, especially if I was not wearing Aero mitts or gloves. And another thing that I'm probably going to give a go is a little bit of gym chalk to dry out the hands and make sure that I can hold on to those extensions how I need to. The stem is pretty short. I believe it's 90 millimeters, but that's totally fine for where I'm at right now. I am at the UCI legal limit in terms of reach, so I can't go any further anyway. So that means my stem is pretty much locked into what it is. As you'll see, I do have some space underneath that stem, and that's because I want to bring my arms up and my elbows up so I get a good shrug and tuck in my shoulders behind my helmet how they're supposed to be. This is a perfect segue into the clicky bits that you see on the actual extensions here, and those are Clics for my SRAM Red 1x derailleur that's on the rear. Tucked between my extensions and my arm pads here is a Blip box. Now, these are ultra rare, so if you're trying to get your hands on one these days, good luck. I actually lucked out, got a guy to split up a group set, and he sold me this thing for about 300 bucks, which is still over retail. Now, what's crazy about this is I was actually looking for the old SRAM Red Blip box before to match the derailleur, because at the time, the SRAM Axis Blip box was supposedly not compatible with the 11-speed system. That has since been updated, and the Axis 12-speed Blip box does actually work with the 11-speed Red derailleur, and that's because of a firmware update that SRAM released, I believe mid last year or something like that. So basically what you have is the Clics in my extensions here. They just shift up and then down. The right is up, left is down. Those run into the Blip box, and the Blip box sends the signal back to the 11-speed. That allowed me to go 1x and eliminate my front derailleur. We've already been talking about the rear derailleur, so that brings me into the drivetrain. What you'll see here on the front is a pretty unique setup. This is an Ultegra R8000 compatible chainring made by Garbaruk. Now, the Garbaruk chainring is a 1x long tooth chainring, and it's a 56 tooth. I found that 56 teeth is about what puts me in the middle of my cassette at race pace typically. Connected to this chainring, you have your Ultegra R8000 172.5mm crank arms. Obviously, threaded into those crank arms are my Fabero Asioma power pedals. They take a Look Keo cleat, and I love these. I swap them between all my bikes and then just calibrate them up. They're ready to rock all the time. Super easy to charge. They don't have any external battery or anything like that. So jumping to the back of the bike here, we're gonna talk rear derailleur. This is a SRAM Red 1x rear derailleur. I'm running an Ultegra cassette with that thing. It is an 11 to 25 cassette, and the reason being is because on my training wheels right here, I also have an Ultegra 11 to 25 cassette. Now, that is perfect for racing. As I said before, the 56 tooth in the front puts me about dead center of the cassette, and that's ideal for the most efficient chain line. Now, you might be wondering about compatibility between the SRAM Red 11-speed rear derailleur and the Ultegra cassette that's on there, as well as the whole Ultegra front setup. Now, these are compatible, but I'm gonna go into why all this stuff is compatible and what works and what doesn't in a future video, so stay tuned and subscribe if you want to see that. The last thing I really need to talk about here is just this Shimano 11-speed chain I have. You can see it's caked with wax, and that's because I wax the chain. It's the best way I've found to keep the drivetrain clean and still efficient. Now, I am terrible at keeping drivetrains really clean, so I know that I would be losing watts to basically a nasty setup. And I would be terrible at keeping my chain clean and lubed how you're supposed to be able to go fast. So we've already briefly touched on the fact that I have a race wheel set and a training wheel set. On the rear, I'm running the HED Jet Aero disc, and as you'll notice here, this is just an aluminum rim and it is skinned. Now, the reason that HED does that is because that allows them to design it with the differences in airflow in mind between your drive side and your non-drive side. As you'll notice, this thing is asymmetrical. Now, if you had a full carbon disc, you couldn't really design it to be asymmetrical like this because the wheel would be almost impossible to true. That would cause all sorts of issues, and also the wheel would be extremely heavy. I've had no constructability issues with HED. I do take really good care of it when it's off the bike. I do keep it in a wheel bag and it is protected. Shut up! Right here you have a cat. He's not Aero at all. He's just annoying and is getting in my way while I'm trying to film. Moving to the front, we're looking at the HED Jet RC9 Black. This is basically 90 millimeters deep, and this actually matches my training wheel, which is right here. This is the full wheel set I have for training. It's the RC9 Black, like I said. The big difference between the RC, like Performance Series, and the Black is this brake track right here. It's still aluminum, but they did put a different stopping surface in here. I have noticed, to be honest with you, that my braking on the front surface is a lot stronger than on the rear surface, but Who needs brakes, dude? It's a frickin' TT. Let's rock. As you guys will notice, I'm running the same tires on the front and the rear, and those are Vittoria Corsa Speeds. Now I'm running inside of those Vittoria Corsa Speeds these extremely expensive and ridiculous latex tubes. Now, reason being is a Vittoria Corsa Speed and latex tube is perhaps the fastest setup on the planet. Check out bicycle rolling resistance or whatever it is, that'll tell you. But basically this comes down to like 5 watt savings per friggin' tire. So imagine 10 watt savings over the course of a 40K and what that equates to in seconds. Dude, you can't freaking beat it. Let's go. That's why I'm so slippery. Guys, the last thing that we haven't yet touched on here is the saddle. I am running the ISM PN 1.1 saddle. It's set up for TT bikes, having your hips rotated heavily forward and being way off the front of the bike. Now, I did try running the stock saddle that was on here. It was like a Synchros or something like that. I have no idea, but it was the Scott standard issue. And what I'll say is I absolutely hated it, and it was an absolute gooch blaster. The one complaint I do have is there is a little bit of sliding forward and backward, and that does make it a little bit tougher to stay planted in the position you want to be in when you're in position. ISM recommends, I believe, like 1 to 3 degrees forward tilt. So I initially tried that, but I found it was pushing me pretty far off the front of the saddle. So I've gone ahead and reduced that just a little bit, and I think I'm closer to the 1 degree side. Leave a like for the stupid cat that won't leave me alone. His name's McCoy, if you're wondering. Alright, so I guess I can't end the video without a sound check. You.